Your soulmate thought the biggest decision of their life had already been made. The future was planned, the family was expecting an announcement, and everyone around them believed marriage was only a matter of time. But then a psychic looked directly into their eyes and said something that made the entire room go silent. Do not marry yet. Someone from your past is coming back. And when they do, everything you believe about love is going to change. For a few seconds, your soulmate could not even respond. They wanted to laugh it off. They wanted to call it coincidence, imagination, or just another dramatic prediction. But there was one problem. The psychic had mentioned details no stranger should have known, details about an old connection, an unfinished goodbye, and a person whose memory your soulmate had spent years trying to bury. Listen carefully. Because the person the psychic was talking about was not just some forgotten face from the past. It was you. Your soulmate's expression changed immediately. Their hands became still. Their eyes dropped toward the table because suddenly this was no longer entertainment. This was touching a part of their heart they had carefully kept hidden from everyone around them. The psychic leaned forward and said, "There is someone you once loved differently from everyone else. You may have separated physically, but emotionally, the story never received its real ending." Your soulmate swallowed hard. Because they knew exactly what that meant. There had been other relationships. Other promises. Other attempts to move forward. But whenever your name entered their mind, something felt different. There was no clean ending attached to you. There was only distance, unanswered questions, and the painful feeling that something important had been interrupted before either of you truly understood what was happening. And now, just when your soulmate was preparing to make a permanent commitment, someone was telling them to wait. Not because marriage itself was wrong, but because one unfinished truth was about to return. The psychic continued, "Before you promise forever to anyone, you are going to receive something connected to this person. It may be a message. It may be news. It may even be an unexpected meeting. But when it happens, you will understand why you were told to wait." That sentence followed your soulmate home. That night, they barely slept. They kept thinking about the past, about conversations with you, moments they had forgotten they remembered, and especially the final days before everything fell apart. For years, your soulmate had convinced themselves that losing you was simply destiny. But now another possibility was beginning to disturb them. What if you were never supposed to lose each other at all? What if somebody interfered? What if a misunderstanding had been allowed to grow because neither of you knew the complete truth? And what if the reason your soulmate never felt completely settled with anyone else was because their heart had been waiting for an answer it never received? Don't skip this, because what happened the following morning made the psychic's warning impossible to ignore. Your soulmate received a call from a family member they had not spoken with about you in years. The conversation began normally, but then the family member suddenly said, "There's something about what happened between you and that person that I should have told you a long time ago." Your soulmate froze. They immediately asked, "What person?" There was silence on the other end. Then your name was spoken. Your name. Your soulmate stood completely still. Less than 24 hours earlier, a psychic had warned them that someone from their past was coming back. Now a family member was reopening the exact chapter your soulmate had spent years trying to close. But the biggest shock had not happened yet. Because the family member admitted that your soulmate had never been given the entire truth about why you disappeared from their life. There had been a conversation. A private conversation. One your soulmate never knew had taken place. And according to this family member, something said during that conversation had influenced the separation between you far more than anyone had ever admitted. Your soulmate's voice began shaking. Are you telling me I made my decision without knowing everything? The family member hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Suddenly every old memory looked different. Your soulmate remembered how quickly things had changed between you. How questions were never properly answered. How certain people seemed unusually determined to convince them that moving on was the only option. And now they were wondering whether the relationship had ended naturally, or whether someone had quietly pushed it toward an ending. Your soulmate immediately remembered the psychic's final warning. Do not make a permanent promise until the past has had one last chance to speak. That evening, your soulmate did something nobody around them expected. They postponed an important conversation about marriage. The family wanted answers. Someone became upset. Questions started flying from every direction. But your soulmate refused to explain. Because deep inside, they were waiting. Waiting for the message. Waiting for the truth. Waiting to discover whether the person coming back from their past really was you. And then, late that night, their phone lit up. Your soulmate looked at the screen. And their face went completely pale. Because what appeared there was connected directly to you. But the most unbelievable part was not who sent it. It was what the message revealed about the night your soulmate lost you, and once they read the final sentence, they realized the psychic had left out one terrifying detail about your return. Your soulmate stared at that message for what felt like forever. Their heart was pounding so hard that everything around them seemed to disappear. They read the first sentence once, then again, and then a third time because their mind refused to accept what their eyes were seeing. This was not a romantic message from you. It was not a simple apology. It was evidence that the story they had believed for years might have been built on a lie. The message had come from someone who knew both sides of what happened between you. Someone who had remained silent because speaking up would have exposed a decision made inside the family years ago. And now, with your soulmate preparing to marry, that person could no longer carry the secret. The message said, before you marry anyone, you deserve to know why you and that person were really separated. Your soulmate immediately sat down. Every word from the psychic returned to their mind. Do not marry yet. Someone from your past is coming back. Until this moment, they had still been trying to convince themselves that the prediction was nothing more than coincidence. But now the timing felt impossible to dismiss. The message continued. Years ago, when your connection with your soulmate was becoming serious, someone close to the family became afraid of what would happen if the two of you stayed together. They believed your soulmate was making the wrong choice. Instead of confronting both of you openly, they decided to interfere quietly. Information was withheld. Conversations were twisted. Words were repeated differently from the way they had originally been spoken. And suddenly your soulmate remembered something. There had been one specific day when everything between you changed. Before that day, there had been tension, but there was still love. There was still hope. There were still plans. Then one conversation happened, and afterward your soulmate became colder toward you. They believed something about you that made them question everything. For years, they thought that information had come directly from someone trustworthy. Now they were discovering that the story had been altered. Your soulmate whispered, "Why would anyone do this?" But the message had an answer. Because someone believed separating the two of you would protect your soulmate's future. They thought eventually your soulmate would forget you. They thought time would erase the connection. They were wrong. Your soulmate had learned how to live without you, but they had never completely learned how to stop remembering you. There was always one corner of their heart that remained untouched, because nobody else had ever reached them in exactly the same way. Now the past was no longer staying buried. Your soulmate began searching through old messages, photographs, and forgotten conversations. They wanted to know whether there had been signs they missed. And buried inside an old exchange, they found something that made their stomach drop. You had tried to explain. Years ago, you had actually tried to tell them that something was wrong. You had written words your soulmate had misunderstood at the time. You had asked them not to believe everything they were hearing. You had asked for one honest conversation before everything ended. But that conversation never happened. Your soulmate covered their mouth as the realization hit. Maybe you had not walked away because you stopped caring. Maybe you walked away because you believed your soulmate had already chosen to believe everyone except you. For the first time in years, your soulmate felt the full weight of what had been lost. They whispered your name into the empty room. Not angrily. Not bitterly. But with regret. The next morning, the person your soulmate was expected to marry noticed immediately that something had changed. They asked why the marriage discussion had suddenly been postponed. Your soulmate tried to avoid answering, but eventually the question became unavoidable. Is this about someone from your past? Silence. That silence became the answer. The atmosphere changed instantly. Your soulmate finally said, "There is something I need to understand before I promise my entire life to anyone." Those words shocked everyone. Family members began calling. Some demanded that your soulmate ignore the past. Others insisted that reopening an old relationship would only create pain. But one particular family member reacted differently. They became nervous. far too nervous. And your soulmate noticed. So they confronted them privately. What really happened between me and that person? The family member denied knowing anything. Your soulmate placed the message in front of them. Their face changed. That single reaction told your soulmate more than any confession could have. Tell me the truth, your soulmate demanded. Did someone interfere? For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the family member sat down slowly and said something your soulmate never expected to hear. Yes. One word. But it destroyed years of certainty. Your soulmate felt tears gathering in their eyes as they asked the question they had been terrified to ask. Did they still want me when we separated? The family member looked away. That was when your soulmate knew the answer was going to hurt. Yes, they whispered. They did. Your soulmate could barely breathe. Because suddenly they understood that both of you may have spent years believing the other person had chosen to leave. But neither of you had been given the complete truth. And there was more. The family member admitted that shortly before you disappeared from your soulmate's life, you had left something behind for them. Not money. Not a gift. A letter. A letter your soulmate had never received. Your soulmate immediately demanded to know where it was. The family member hesitated before saying, "I don't have it anymore." Then who does? Another long silence followed. Finally, the answer came. Someone from your soulmate's past had kept that letter all these years. And 3 days ago, that person had contacted the family. They were coming back. They wanted to return the letter personally. Your soulmate's entire body went cold. The psychic had not simply predicted that the past would return. Someone was literally on their way back carrying the final words you had written before everything between you collapsed. But your soulmate still had one question. Why now? The family member looked directly into their eyes. Because they heard you were getting married. Your soulmate felt their heart sink. And then came the sentence that changed everything. They said once you read that letter, you may not want to marry the person everyone expects you to marry. Your soulmate stood there speechless. Because suddenly the marriage was no longer the biggest decision in front of them. The biggest decision was whether they were brave enough to finally discover what you had tried to tell them all those years ago. And before they could say another word, the doorbell rang. The family member looked toward the door and went pale. Your soulmate asked, "Who is that?" But nobody answered. The bell rang again. Your soulmate slowly walked toward the door, reached for the handle, and opened it. Someone was standing outside holding an old sealed envelope. Your soulmate recognized the handwriting immediately. It was yours. But written across the back of that envelope were 5 words your soulmate had never seen before. Give this only before marriage. And when the visitor explained why those words had been hidden for so many years, your soulmate realized the secret was much bigger than a stolen letter. Your soulmate stopped instantly. After everything they had already discovered, they thought there could not possibly be another secret powerful enough to change the situation. But the expression on your face told them otherwise. You had waited years for this conversation, and you were not going to let another misunderstanding survive between you. Your soulmate looked directly at you and whispered, "What does the person I'm supposed to marry have to do with what happened between us?" For a moment, you said nothing. You looked down, gathering the courage to reopen a chapter that had caused both of you enough pain already. Then you finally answered, "They knew more about our past than you were ever told." Your soulmate's face went completely still. "What do you mean?" You explained that years after the separation, you unexpectedly learned that the person now preparing to marry your soulmate had crossed paths with someone connected to the old family secret. You did not know exactly how much they had been told at first. You did not even know whether they understood the full story. But eventually, something happened that made you realize they knew your name long before your soulmate ever mentioned you. Your soulmate shook their head. "That's impossible." You reached into your pocket and pulled out a folded copy of an old message. "I wish it were." Your soulmate took it with trembling hands. The message was dated long before the current marriage plans became serious. And there, clearly visible, was your name. Your soulmate read the conversation slowly. Someone from the family had warned the person they were now preparing to marry that there had once been someone your soulmate loved deeply. Someone they had never received closure from. Someone whose return could reopen everything. That person was you. Your soulmate looked up at you. "So they knew?" You nodded. They knew there was unfinished history. Your soulmate's eyes filled with disbelief. "But why wouldn't they tell me?" "That is something you need to ask them." Those words hurt because they were true. You were not standing there demanding that your soulmate leave anyone. You were not asking them to make an immediate decision. You were simply giving them what had been stolen from both of you years earlier, the right to know the truth before choosing a future. Your soulmate stared at the old message again. Then another detail caught their attention. There was a reply underneath. The person preparing to marry them had written, "If the past stays buried, it won't matter." Your soulmate's hands began shaking. Those words changed everything. Because suddenly this person was no longer completely outside the secret. Maybe they had not caused the original separation. Maybe they had never personally interfered with you. But they had apparently learned that your soulmate's past was unresolved and had chosen not to bring it into the open. Your soulmate whispered, "Everyone knew something except me." That realization hurt more than anger. Their family had decided what truth they could handle. People around them had decided which information they deserved. And once again, your soulmate had been preparing to make a life-changing decision without having the complete story. You stepped closer, but you kept enough distance to let them breathe. "I didn't come back to destroy your life," you said. "I came back because I heard you were about to make a permanent promise, and I couldn't live with knowing you might make it while still believing I abandoned you. Your soulmate looked at you with tears running down their face. Then tell me something. You waited. If nobody had interfered, would you have stayed? The question carried years of pain inside it. You did not hesitate. Yes. Your soulmate closed their eyes. That single answer reached a place inside them that no explanation had touched. All those years. All those lonely nights. All those times they wondered why they had not been enough. And now they were learning that the person they had spent years trying to forget had once been fighting to stay. Your soulmate opened their eyes again. I would have stayed too. Silence surrounded both of you. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind of silence that happens when two people realize how different their lives might have been if they had simply been allowed one honest conversation. But neither of you could change the years already gone. You could only decide what happened next. Your soulmate looked at you and said, I need to confront them. You understood immediately. Then do it. Your soulmate returned home carrying the letter and the copied message. The family was already waiting. So was the person they had been preparing to marry. The moment your soulmate walked inside, questions began. Where were you? Why did you disappear? Why have you been ignoring everyone? Your soulmate did not answer any of them. Instead, they placed the old message on the table. The room became silent. The person they were preparing to marry looked down at it. Their expression changed immediately. Your soulmate noticed. You recognize this. No answer. Look at me. Slowly, they did. Your soulmate asked the question directly. When did you first learn about them? Everyone knew who them meant. You. The person hesitated. That hesitation was enough to make your soulmate's heart sink. Answer me. Finally, the truth came. Before we became serious. Your soulmate stepped backward. So you knew there was someone from my past? Yes. You knew I never had the full story? I knew there were unanswered questions. And you said nothing? The person tried to explain. They said they were afraid. Afraid that if your soulmate discovered what really happened, old feelings would return. Afraid that everything they had built together would disappear. Afraid that your name carried more power in your soulmate's heart than anyone wanted to admit. Your soulmate listened quietly. Then they asked one final question. If you believed I had truly moved on, why were you so afraid of me learning the truth? Nobody had an answer strong enough. Your soulmate looked around the room. For the first time, they understood something clearly. This was no longer about choosing between two people. It was about choosing whether the next chapter of their life would be built on complete truth or carefully protected secrets. I cannot get married like this, your soulmate said. The room erupted. Someone began arguing. Someone else started crying. A family member begged them not to throw away their future because of something that happened years ago. But your soulmate remained calm. I'm not throwing away my future. I'm refusing to choose it while people are still deciding what I'm allowed to know. Then they removed the ring. They placed it gently on the table. Not because they had immediately chosen you. Not because a psychic had ordered them to do anything. But because after years of other people influencing their decisions, your soulmate finally wanted the next choice to belong completely to them. They walked away from the room. Later that evening, they sat alone and called the psychic. There was only one question they wanted answered. You told me someone from my past was coming back. Did you know it would be them? The psychic remained silent for several seconds. Then came an unexpected response. I never told you who was coming back. Your soulmate frowned. What does that mean? The psychic continued, you assumed the person returning was the one you loved. But there were two people from your past connected to this story. Your soulmate's heart began pounding again. Who is the second person? The psychic answered carefully. The person who started the original lie. Your soulmate stood up. Because that person had disappeared from the family's life years ago. Nobody had heard from them. Nobody knew where they were. At least, that was what your soulmate had always been told. Then the psychic said something even more disturbing. They already know you met the person you once loved. Your soulmate's blood ran cold. How could they possibly know that? The psychic did not answer directly. Instead, they said, because they are coming back to tell you why they separated the two of you in the first place. The call ended. Your soulmate stood there staring at the phone. And less than 10 minutes later, another call appeared on the screen. Unknown number. Your soulmate answered cautiously. Nobody spoke at first. Then a voice they had not heard in years said their name. Your soulmate recognized it immediately. Before they could respond, the person said only one sentence. Before you go back to the person you loved, you need to know what your family made me promise never to tell you. And suddenly your soulmate realized the deepest secret behind your separation had still not been revealed. Your soulmate held the phone tightly as that familiar voice finally revealed the secret buried for years. The person admitted they had been pressured by the family to help keep you and your soulmate apart. They were told your relationship would destroy carefully made plans for your soulmate's future. So messages were twisted, conversations were hidden, and both of you were allowed to believe the other had chosen to walk away. Your soulmate whispered, so we lost all those years because nobody gave us the truth? The answer was painful, yes. For the first time, your soulmate understood that your love had not simply failed, it had been interrupted. But instead of living inside regret, they decided that nobody else would control what happened next. They called you and asked for the one thing you had requested all those years ago, an honest conversation. When you met again, there were no psychics, family members, promises, or hidden letters between you. Your soulmate looked into your eyes and said, "I cannot give us back the years we lost." Then their voice softened, "But I can finally choose what I do with the years ahead." You did not demand marriage, a promise, or an immediate answer, you simply reached for their hand. And for the first time, your soulmate realized why the psychic had warned them not to marry yet. The warning was never meant to guarantee who they should choose, it forced them to face the truth before making a permanent decision. Now the old secrets had finally lost their power, and the next chapter belonged only to the two people who had been denied their real ending. Sometimes the strongest love is not the one that never gets separated, it is the one that finally gets the chance to speak without anyone standing between two hearts. And as your soulmate held your hand, they whispered the words you had waited years to hear. This time, nobody else gets to decide how our story ends.